Welcome back to our C# beginner tutorials. In the previous lesson, we looked at methods. I think in the like 2 lessons back, we looked at void methods. Then in just the last lesson we did, we looked at methods that return a value. And if I remember clearly, this was the program that we wrote. So this was the method that we created, this getFullNames method, which returns a string as a string data type. So like we said, methods are like a collection of statements whereby you like pack the statements in under one line, right? So whenever you want to call those statements, you just call that the name of the method, you just write it like we wrote it here. And in the case of when they return a value, like this method returns a value, and the type of value it returns is a string data type. So for using these types of methods, we said you could write some variable and then you say equal, that is assign, and then you write the method on the right hand side. So the value that method is going to be method is going to return is going to be stored inside this variable. Okay. We also said you could also use it as an expression. Okay. So since this is a string, anywhere you could use a normal string in an expression, you could also use this method. Okay, fine. That's just a recap of what we did in the previous lesson. In this lesson, what we're going to do is we're still going to be looking at methods. However, in this lesson, we'll be looking at methods that take arguments. Okay. Now, if you look at the way methods are, is that there are actually 2 ways you can classify them. Okay. You could say a method returns a value or it's a void method. That's the first 2 classifications that we looked at. You remember we first looked at void methods. That's methods that do not return a value. And then there are methods that return a value. Okay, that is just one classification of methods. Let me bring up my notepad. So we said classification of methods. There are 2 ways you can classify methods. The first is where methods that return a value, and void methods. Okay, now these are 2 different types of methods under whether they return a value or not. Okay, that's one way you can classify methods. And the other way you can classify methods is you have another 2. Okay, we can call this 1, and you can call this 2. That's under the first classification. Then under the second classification, we have methods that take arguments, or parameters. Okay, you can call arguments parameters. And then there are methods that do not take arguments or parameters. Okay, so we've looked at these 2 different classes under the whether the method returns a value or not. Now there is another classification. Now what you should know is that you can actually have a method that returns a value and also takes arguments. Okay, a method can return a value and also take arguments. Okay, that's why there are 2 different classes of methods. Okay, and you could also have a method that returns a value but does not take arguments, just like the ones we looked at. If you remember the 2 methods we looked at one method that returns a value but doesn't take an argument. Okay, we also looked at a void method. That's the first method we looked at. it doesn't return any value, and it also does not take any methods. Okay, it doesn't take any arguments. So far we haven't actually looked at any method that takes parameters. All we have been looking at is methods that do not take arguments. Okay, I hope this is clear. So all I've been trying to say is that all the two methods that we looked at, they all do not take arguments. So they are under this classification when you try to look at it in the second we're looking at the second classification of methods. Okay, the first two methods we look at do not take arguments. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Now what we're going to do is we're going to look at methods that take arguments or parameters. And just like we did for this one, we looked at two. We looked at one that does not return a value, that returns a value, and we also looked at one that does not return a value. We are also under this classification of method. We're going to look at two different types of methods. We'll look at one method which returns a value and takes arguments. Okay, and then we're also going to look at a void method. That's a method that does not return a value and also takes arguments. Okay, all right. Let's switch back to our Visual Studio. For this class, I think it would be better we just create a new solution entirely. Okay, so I'll just go ahead and terminate this. I'll say close solution. Okay, so there's close and there's also close solution. I think close will close exactly, it will close the file, but the solution is still open. If you remember your solution explorer, if you come here, you can still open up that that file you just closed by double clicking on this program.cs, and it opens the code for you. So if you go to file and choose close, it normally closes the current file that's opened. Okay, so what we want to do is want to close the whole solution. Okay, so we've closed that solution. Now what we're going to do is we're going to create a new C# solution. We're still going to be using a console application. Okay, so you can close that for now. You can say file, open, or create actually. So we'll go to new and we'll choose project. If you remember, if you choose to create a new project, it will give you option to create a new solution. Okay, so we're going to choose C#. Okay, we'll just filter to C# and we're going to say console app. Okay, so we're creating a console application and then we click next. Now the name of the project, I'm going to call it let's just call it methods with arguments. Okay, that's the name of the project, and the solution name automatically takes the name of the project. Okay, that's the first project. Remember, the solution houses several projects. Okay, this first project is going to lie inside the solution, but subsequently you can add more solutions. Okay, location, let's put it on our desktop as we normally do. I'll go to desktop, my apps, I'll put it inside my apps, and then I'll call it methods with, that's the name of the solution folder, or let's call it second app. Okay, second app. Okay, let's create let's click on select folder. Oh, okay, we haven't created the folder yet, so let's create a folder and call it second app. Okay, and then we'll click on it and then click select folder. Okay, and then we click on create at the bottom right here. Okay, yeah, if you remember, it creates a namespace for us. Remember I said I'll explain what namespace is all about, and also this using statement, class. We haven't looked at class. I said don't worry too much about all this code that's written at the beginning. Just make sure this is what we are interested in. This is where program execution starts. Okay, inside here we can start writing our code. Okay, so in this program, like I said, we're going to create a method that takes arguments. Okay, let's see. What type of program? Okay, the program we'll create is, let's just create a program that calculates the area of a circle. Okay, if you remember your elementary maths class, for every type of circle, there's a way, or there's a formula which you use to calculate the area, which is pi multiplied by the radius of the circle multiplied by the radius of the circle. That's pi r squared. Okay, so that's how you calculate the area of a circle. So what we want to do now is we want to create a program, okay, that allows us to easily compute the area of any circle whatsoever. So all we need to do is we just say, hey program, my circle is radius 10 centimeters, okay, and then the program will tell us, okay, since your circle is 10 centimeters, then the area of your circle is da 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 da. Okay, it just calculates it and it gives us the result. Okay, that's how we're going to write it. And what we're going to use in that program to that will help us is we're going to create a method. Okay, we're going to create a method that takes an argument. Okay, the argument that method is going to take is the radius of that circle. Okay, maybe it might not be so clear. Let's just go ahead. We already know how to write a method. Okay, you usually start with say public. We'll make it a public method. Won't make it static. I don't want to make it static. Let's just make it a normal instance method. So we'll make it public. Remember, it's going to return a value. Remember the kind of method we want to create. We give it the radius, and what is it going to give us back? It's going to give us something back, meaning it's going to return a value. Okay, we give it a radius, which is the argument we're giving it. That radius we're giving the method is the argument. Okay, and then what the method is giving us back is the return value. Okay, so it means that this method is going to have a return value of what? Remember the different data types we have. We have int, we have string, we have float, we have double, we have other different types of data types. But if you remember clearly, it's the float data type that is perfect for returning the area of a circle. Okay, because imagine if we give it say a radius. In fact, any radius that is not divisible by 7, I believe. Yes, any radius that's not divisible by 7, because pi is, we normally use pi to be 22/7, even though, yeah, I know pi is not 22/7. That's a topic for another discussion anyway. But normally in our elementary math class, we're being told that we should take pi as 22 divided by 7. So it means for this method, any value we give it that of radius that is not divisible by 7, it means the result is going to give us as the area of the circle is not going to be a whole number. Okay, that's all I've been trying to get at. Is not going to be a whole number. Now, because most of our results that are going to be computed are not going to be whole numbers, that automatically tells us that, it gives us a hint that look, the return type of this method should be float. Remember what float is? Float is what do you call it? Real numbers. Okay, float is real numbers, just that it has some limitation in the how do I put it? It has some limitation in the accuracy or the decimal place. Okay. Anyway, that's just a whole gibberish. Don't worry about what I've been saying. Just know that you're going to use float. Okay. Public float. We're going to now remember, if you're creating a method, you first give it the access modifier of the method. Okay. Now the access modifier tells you whether it is accessible. That's it. Kind of controls the accessibility of that method, because we haven't done classes yet, so don't worry too much about the access modifier. The next is the return type. We said is going to be float, and then finally the name of the method. Okay, that's the name we're going to be calling whenever we want to call the method. Okay, we're going to call it compute area. Look at how I write the name of the method. I started with a capital C, and then compute, and then capital A. Okay, always make sure you stick to the way you write. Almost every programming language is case sensitive, so you should always make sure you follow the casing meticulously. Otherwise, if you write compute area here with a capital C and a capital A, and then later on in your program you write compute area with a small c and a capital A, you're going to get an error. Okay, it's going to tell you it doesn't know what this compute area is. Okay, so always make sure you're careful about the casing. So we're going to call it compute area. Remember, in the previous methods we have been creating, we just open a normal bracket, close a normal bracket, and then open a curly bracket and close a curly bracket, and inside here we normally write the code and then return a value. If you remember, that's for methods that return a value but don't take arguments. Okay, now for this method, because it's going to take an argument, this is where you're going to write the argument. Okay, the argument is going to lie in between these parentheses. That's the normal brackets. Okay, now when you are declaring the method, okay, just like we've done here, we gave the method that's what it's going to return. We gave it a value, a data type, meaning it's float. Okay, also that argument you're going to give the method, it also needs a data type. Okay, it means, look, you're saying, okay, hey method, this compute area, you're defining this compute area. You say it's a method. Okay, you're saying I'm going to give you something. Okay, that's the argument. You're saying I'm going to give it something. Now you have to tell it what data type is that thing you're giving it. Okay, I hope that makes sense. Now, without much bothering you, I want you to know that it's going to be a float also. Okay, because it's a real number. Remember, it depends. If your program is only going to be computing areas of circles that have radius of only whole numbers, then I think you wouldn't be doing anything wrong by putting int here. Okay, since int all your radius you're going to calculate are going to be whole numbers. But who is going to do that? Okay, it's always good to make your program flexible enough. Okay, because if you make it int and then someone provides a floating point number, then you're going to have inaccurate results. Okay, because of, anyway, let's not go into what happens if that happens. Okay, let's just give it a float data type, and then you're going to name, the next thing is the name of the argument. Now you can call it whatever you want. Okay, the fact that I'm calling it radius here doesn't mean you have to call it radius. You can call it Brad, you can call it RA, you can call it RAD. Hey, you can call it your name. Okay, but always remember, when you're writing your programs, always write meaningful names for your variables. Okay, it's always good to write meaningful names. So I'm going to call it radius. So if you notice, once you look at this variable name and you see radius, oh okay, it hits you. Okay, compute area, and this radius, oh yeah, we're trying to calculate the area of a circle. Okay, That's why it's always good to write uh, meaningful names for your variables. Okay. Okay. Now that's the definition. That's how you start this method. Okay. Now inside the curly brackets, remember we're going to write the code of what occurs when this method is called. Okay, remember what we said. We said when this method is called, what we need to do is we're going to return, that's all. We're going to calculate the area of the circle. Okay, and then when we calculate the area of the circle, it should return that area. Okay, so we're going to say return 22 divided by 7 multiplied by radius multiplied by radius. Okay, and then don't forget your semicolon. Okay, and that's it. Oh, okay, why is it telling us the modifier public is not valid for this? Oh, okay, I see what we've been doing. This is wrong. Okay, we're not supposed to declare our method inside the static void main method. Okay, this is wrong. Okay, the method is supposed to be inside the program class. Okay, remember this is one method inside the program class, the main method, and then outside the main, inside the program class, but not within the main method, we also create other methods. Okay, all right, so it's happy now. So don't forget, we're not writing, remember the code you write inside here is a code that should call this area. Okay, compute area. Okay, so this is where you declare the method outside here. Okay, fine. Now at the beginning of our program, what we're going to do is, by the way, we've created the method. Okay, that's how you create the method. Now at the beginning, when we run this program, remember execution starts at the static void main method, and it ends there. Okay, so if we run this program, nothing happens. Okay, even though we have a compute area method here, nothing actually happens. Why? Because execution starts here and it ends here. So immediately you run the program, it goes static void main. Okay, it goes in here. There's nothing to execute, so it exits. Once it exits, that's it. Your program has terminated. Okay. Now, in order to be able to call this guy, first remember what we said. We want the user. We're not going to calculate, like we're not just going to take any arbitrary circle. Say, hey, the area of circle with radius 7 is this. Okay. No, we want the user to actually give us the radius. Okay, look at how this is just a definition for the method. Okay, when the user gives us the radius, we will now pass that radius to this compute area method. Okay, we will pass the radius as an argument. Okay, you see where the arguments come from, okay, or the parameters come from. We pass that radius that the user gives us, we pass it to this compute area method, and it uses this computation, this formula, to calculate the result and then return the answer. Okay, so that's what we're going to do. Remember your console.readline method. Okay, so we're going to first say console.write, is it console.write, console.writeLine, and we're going to tell the user type the radius of a circle. Okay, so this is going to be displayed on the console, and then immediately after that is displayed, we will say console.readline. Okay, and remember console.readline is, it returns something, so we're going to say float r. Now r here is going to stand as our radius. Okay, I'm writing it as r. I don't want to write it as radius. I'm writing it as r just so that you know. I want you to know right from here, right from your beginning, because so many programmers start learning like wrongly, because they get this misinformation that the radius. Okay, let me just try and let me write it radius here. Radius equal, sorry, radius equal this. Okay, now while we have an error, read the next line of characters from the standard input stream. Why are we having errors? Oh, okay, yeah, it's a string, so we have to say float.pass. Okay, we have to do something like float.pass. Okay, we're using float.pass because we usually get a string. Anyway, I'm going to explain that later. What I want to focus on for now is this radius. Okay, now notice what I've done now. I wrote float radius. Now this radius, if you notice, is a variable, right? This is also another variable. Now programmers that start learning early, or they kind of get this idea that this radius that you write here is the same as this radius. Okay, that's this variable is the same as this variable, but that is wrong. It's wrong. They're not the same. If you remember the scope of variables, notice what happens. Remember scope. This is a curly bracket. This is a curly bracket. You start this float here, so meaning you declare this variable here, meaning this radius is a variable, yes, but its whole lifetime or its whole lifeline starts at and ends within these curly brackets. It doesn't go outside this curly bracket. So the moment we call this compute area float radius, this is completely another radius entirely. Okay, this is a different variable from this. Okay, that's why I don't want to write this as radius. I'm going to write it as r, so that you know they are different. Okay, I want you to know that they are different. I'm calling this r and I'm calling this radius. However, what happens after this? Look at what happens. Float r equals, okay, so this allows the user to type the radius, and we use this float.pass. Now when the user type a number, okay, the number actually comes in as a string. Okay, console.readline actually reads whatever you type, the characters you type, it reads it as a string. Okay, so we need to use this float.pass to convert that to a floating point number. Okay, all right, that's why we're just using float.pass. Okay, and then it stores it inside this r. Okay, it stores whatever the user types inside this r. The next thing we do is we're going to call this compute area. Okay, to do that, okay, we're just going to write it out. Console.writeLine, write line. Okay, I think this program is getting way too long, but I just want you to get the hang of it. Console.writeLine, the area of a radius, sorry, the area of a circle with radius, I'll use this. Okay, I don't want to confuse you here. Let's not use that. Let's just use a plus, radius plus. We're going to write r. Okay, remember we're using this r here. That's the number the user enters, that types, okay, of radius r, and then we're going to put another plus. The reason we're using a plus here is because this string, this is literal string, okay, and we want to concatenate it with the r here. Okay, r is a floating point number, so we have to kind of like it's a float variable. That's what I meant to say. It's a float variable, so you have to concatenate it like this. You can't put, remember, if you put r inside this quotation marks, it's going to type out the r the way you wrote it. Okay, but what you want is not the r to be written. You want what the r is storing. Okay, you want what r variable r is holding to be displayed. Okay, that's why we're writing it outside the quotation marks and we're using plus to concatenate it. Okay, so the area of a circle with radius r is, so we give a space there, is another space, and then we concatenate it with, remember we're going to call compute area now to compute it, compute area, and then give it r. Okay, and then remember this is coming out as a floating point number, so we have to use dot to string. Okay, I know this is getting way too complicated. By the way, why is it complaining? I see. Okay, I think we don't have a choice. We have to make this a static method. Okay, let's make it a static method. Okay, now it's happy. Okay. By the way, I'll make sure I take my time to try and explain what all those static. When we treat classes, you'll see what all those things mean. Okay, now what is this to string that I'm writing here? Remember, this compute area, it gives us a floating point number as a it gives us a floating point result. Okay, it's a floating point number as a result, but we want to write it, want to concatenate it with this string. Okay, so we have to convert that to a string. I think this might be a very, anyway, let's just write it for now. Okay, let's just write it this way. I'll try to see, maybe in the next lesson I'll try to take my time and explain everything. I'm just trying to rush so that this has taken too long. Okay, so console.writeLine, the area of a circle with radius, now it will write the r, whatever the user type is, and then it calls this. Look at what happens here. It calls compute area, and then it passes this r as an argument to the method. Okay, it calls this method and it passes this r, whatever r is holding, it passes it as an argument. Okay, immediately the compiler encounters this, it comes here. Now this radius, look, notice this radius automatically takes the value of whatever r is holding. Okay, whatever is stored in r, it gets passed to this radius. Okay, so if the user entered 7 will be passed to this radius, and then it will be 22 divided by 7 multiplied by 7 multiplied by 7. Okay, whatever the user enters, that's what's going to be passed to this radius. Okay, by the way, this is the end of the method. I'll just save that, Control S, and then let's just give it a run and see what happens. Okay, fingers crossed. Okay, so it says type the radius of a circle. I'll put 2.0 or 2.5 actually, and I press enter. Okay, notice what happens. The area of a circle with radius 2.5 is 18.75. Okay, it used this compute area method. Okay, it used this method to calculate and automatically gives us the result. Okay, now why I'm using this toString, and let me try and see if I can explain this. Okay, we could have broken this down. Okay, I'm going to break this down into 2 lines of code. Okay, I'm going to write float area, okay, is equal to compute area r. Okay, I think this would make more sense. So notice what happens. Okay, the user is asked to enter the radius of a circle. When he enters, it gets stored inside this r, and then we create another variable called area. Okay, and then we call this method, this compute area, and pass it that radius and say, hey, compute area, quickly compute the area of a circle with this particular number. We don't care what r is, whatever the user enters, it's what's going to be passed in as r. Okay, and then when compute area finishes computation, the result is going to be stored inside this area. Okay, so now this makes sense, right? Area is a float. Now to write out this console.writeLine, the area of a circle with radius r is, now we don't need to write compute area anymore. Okay, I'm going to remove that. Is, notice what we're supposed to write area here. Okay, now area can be written here. I think this makes more sense. However, you wouldn't be wrong if you also write area.toString. Okay, the reason is because area is a floating point number, is a floating point variable. Okay, it's a floating point variable. Now all data types, they have this toString method, and what this does is that it converts, if what you have is a number, it converts that number to a string, okay, to a literal string. I don't know if this is going to make sense. Okay, let's see. Notice this 22. Okay, this is number 22. Now this number 22 is different from this string 22. Okay, this string 22 is just characters of 2 and 2. Okay, two characters that are joined together, 2. Okay, it doesn't, this is not a number. Okay, we call this a numeric string, or whatever you want to call it. This is a string, okay, and this is a number. Okay, now all these float int, they are actually numbers, they are not strings. So when you want to write them inside, when you want to concatenate them with strings, you have to convert them to strings. Okay, now usually when you call console.writeLine, okay, if you have a floating point number, or a variable, if you have a variable that is a numeric variable, it automatically calls its toString method even if you don't call it. Okay, so that's why you can actually write area here without including the string. However, if you're going to call compute area here, you have to provide the toString. I think by writing it this way, I think it's much more readable for beginners to catch what's going on here. Okay, so we call this readLine method. We tell the user to give us the radius, he gives us the radius, and then we type it in. Okay, before I end this program, I just want to give you something that you can use to continually, like, immediately if you notice, immediately we write the number and it computes it. That's all, it terminates, the program terminates. However, I just want to give you like a loop that allows you to like keep running and keep testing other numbers. The program will not terminate until you tell it to. Okay, so the loop we're going to write is while we're going to say r dot toString while, oh, sorry about that, while okay, we're not going to use r, let's say string input. Okay, while string input, oh sorry, we're using a while, not a for. Oh, okay, I'd rather use a for loop then. Okay, for string input. Okay, input string input equals, okay, we're going to start it as an empty, and then string input equals empty. Input is not equal to, so if input is not equal to, or we could use dot equals. Input is not equal to, let's see, what do we use? Okay, let's use exit. Okay, input is not equal to exit. Okay, for string input is this, oh sorry, the what gets okay, we can use a second semicolon there. Why are we having an error here? Oh yeah, it's supposed to be in between. Input is not this, and then finally, okay, the post processing, we don't need any post processing, so I'm going to leave it empty. Okay, and then I'm going to wrap everything, that's the whole code we've written, I'm going to wrap it inside here, and then I'm going to close this here. By the way, I'll try and explain what I'm doing. Okay, all I'm doing is I'm just creating a loop, okay, that's when these lines of code get executed, so far as the input, what the user enters, is not exit, it's going to repeat, okay, it's going to come back and tell the user to type the radius of a circle again, okay. We're going to say console.writeLine, the area of a circle with radius is called this, and then we're going to say console dot write line do you want to calculate the area of another circle? Okay, and then we're going to say console dot read line we're going to say input is equal to console.readline. Okay, so whatever the user enters is going to. So we're going to use yes or no. So let's just use yes / no. You could say type yes or no. Okay, so that will let the user know that we want him to type yes or no. And then here it means we're not going to use exit, we're going to use yes. Okay, so as long as the input is not yes, we're going to use no. Yeah, so as long as the input, as long as what the user enters is not no, it's going to keep executing. Okay, it's going to keep executing. Let's just run this program and see what we've just done. Okay, so all we've done is we've just created like an infinite loop, or a loop that we can control. Okay, let's run that. Okay, so type the radius of a circle, let's say 3. I press enter. The area of a circle with radius 3 is 27. Okay, do you want to calculate the area of another circle? Type yes or no. Okay, so if I type yes, it allows me, so it loops and it allows me to run the program again. Okay, type the radius of a circle. I can put 6 and I put enter. The area of a circle with radius 6 is this. By the way, you can calculate and see if these results were getting accurate. Okay, do you want to calculate the area of another circle? Now notice what happens if I type no, the program terminates. Okay, that's all I did with this for loop. If you remember, try and remember, I think we covered the for loop, we covered the while loop. It doesn't matter what you use here. I could have easily used a while loop, I could use a for loop. There are so many ways you can loop this. Okay, we've already covered loops. If you look at the previous class, you will see how I did this, and also this. If you remember, this is our post processing. Okay, I think that we could have taken this input equals console.readline and smack it here and would still be fine. Okay, anyway, this brings us to the end of this program, this lesson. In this lesson, we looked at how to create a method that takes an argument. Okay, in this method that we created, the method actually returns a value. In the next lesson, we're going to look at a method that does not return a value. Okay, so when you call the method, you just give it the argument. Okay, it takes an argument, you give it you call the method, give it an argument, and you don't expect it to return anything. You just want it to do some things, like you want it to do some stuff for you, and then when it's done doing it, just exits. Okay, If you look at the previous method we looked at, that's method that return the void, like any method that returns void is does not return a value. Okay, all those type of methods are methods that do not return a value. Okay, that's the end of this class. Thank you. How do I stop this? Okay, fine.